Now, let's welcome Tony Hay, Vice President of Microsoft Research Connections, to present his closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So it's a great pleasure to be here. It's my second visit to Nankai and Tianjin within 12 months, and it's a great pleasure to see you all here. So I'm in charge of what we call Connections. It's the part of Microsoft Research which works with universities around the globe. So I get to see research around the world. This is the slide that Rick usually puts up, which is Microsoft Research's mission statement, which hasn't changed in 20 years, and advancing the state of the art, transferring innovative technologies, which you heard from Peter, and ensuring that Microsoft has a future. We have a worldwide presence, and we now have a New York lab, which I don't have a photo because we haven't got a place yet, but almost. What I do is I'm privileged to do the part of Microsoft Research which engages with universities and faculty around the world. So I get to see amazing people at amazing universities around the world, and it really is a true privilege. And for that, we work with Microsoft researchers in Microsoft Research installations around the world and try and matchmake with researchers in universities. And for example, in the demos tomorrow, you'll see some of the amazing things that they're doing. For example, with Kinect in some of the demonstrations you'll see. And I saw some amazing demonstrations today. And secondly, lastly, we do work with research groups to help enhance the tools to help different communities, different researchers do their work. So, for example, we've worked with the Machine Translation Group to produce a kit. So, unusual languages. For example, we were in Mexico, and we're now trying to work with the Mayan community, doing a Mayan translation system. It's never going to be high on a commercial basis, but it's very important for the region. And we're also doing things like Nepalese, and in Russia, in the Russian USSR, there was the state called Tuva, and we're doing Tuvan to English. So all sorts of interesting things that we're doing around languages, around software engineering, and machine translation. Really exciting stuff. So we divide our activities into these sort of 5 themes. In computer science, there's the core computer science activities, software engineering, machine learning, and so on, and natural user interface, which is a subset which we think is extremely important, but it's part of the general computer science. We also then have an initiative looking at problems to do with the environment. I sometimes characterize China as being flooded in the south and a desert in the north, and contemplating moving vast amounts of water from the south to the north, huge environmental consequences. So can we make sure we can understand those and minimize the consequences, maximize the resilience and the sustainability of such things. And health and well-being, using computer science technology such as machine learning, such as computer vision with medical images and so on, to actually try and do things with the medical community. And lastly, as you heard from Anoop's panel, education and scholarly communication is undergoing a transformation. And again, we have technologies that can play a role in this sort of stuff. So, we see all around us the changing nature of discovery caused by, in almost every scientific field, the amount of data is increasing hugely, whether it's from sensor networks, satellites, high-throughput instruments, you name it. Data is overwhelming scientists and industry. And so we believe that the nature of science is changing. And Jim Gray had this vision of the fourth paradigm. This is a book in his on about data-intensive computing, where the emphasis is how to deal with data rather than how to program computers. And it's to deal with complex models, multidisciplinary data, and distributed communities, which bring challenges of their own. So just to give one example. So David Heckerman, who used to lead the machine learning group in Microsoft Research Redmond, is now leading what used to be Jim Gray's group, the eScience group, and he's using machine learning to tackle societal challenges. And with Peter, I agree on some of things with Peter. I agree the world is 4 quadrants. Mine has Pasteur's quadrant in the corner. But the point is that by applying computer science technologies to these areas with huge challenges, I think you learn new things. So, for example, in genetic causes of disease, there's genome-wide association studies. David Heckerman's group, by working on that problem with biologists, has produced an algorithm, a linear mixed model, which goes from a cubic algorithm to a linear algorithm. And that changes the game dramatically. It means that you, instead of sample sizes of only around 10,000, you can go another order of magnitude, and that really changes the game. And furthermore, that improvement of that algorithm will undoubtedly be useful for product groups like Bing and so on. So I think that by studying these problems, you do learn new things. And we're using it to look at HIV/AIDS, how that transforms. And in Brazil, we're looking at seeing if we can assemble the genome for sugarcane to make, for example, varieties that are drought resistant in global warming, or make more efficient use of ethanol. So that's one example of computer science applied to a different field. And I think not only can you help the scientists, but also you can improve your algorithms by dealing with these challenges at scales that you don't normally get in everyday problems. So I think that the vision is really data-intensive science. That data is now becoming central to all that scientists do. And what we're trying to do in our activities with science is use technologies around the whole of the data life cycle, from acquisition of the data, whether it's from sensor networks or whether it's from supercomputers and modeling. You have to collaborate, you want to visualize the data, and then data mining is clearly important, data cleansing and so on. Then you write up the paper, and you need to be able to cite your data and look after the data and share it with others, combine it with other people, and finally to archive and preserve. And technologies from computer science around the whole of the life cycle are really exciting and important. So I'm not going to go in detail because it's late, and as far as I can see, I have -5 minutes of my talk, so I will try and finish early. But we've been working with scientists on various techniques. So this is one which is using SharePoint, where users can put kits on top of SharePoint to make what we call a virtual research environment. So with Oxford, they're using cancer imaging speciality. They're looking at X-ray diffraction data in the University of Delhi, a little module that you can attach to this SharePoint kit. So those are some of the examples of collaboration environments which actually help the scientists do their work. When you've got big data, you need to analyze it. One of the earliest things that we did in Microsoft Research was a tool called Worldwide Telescope. Now, I should explain to you that astronomers are very strange people. They classify each other in a strange way. They classify each other by wavelength. So there's visible astronomers, infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray, and so on. And what this tool enables you to do is to look at the night sky in new ways by looking at it in the visible, looking at objects in the ultraviolet, making connections between them. And it's a tool that enables you to go in and out of these data sets in new ways. And furthermore, what you can do is tell stories. Just like Vannevar Bush, in his original As We May Think article, had scientists following trails through all this information. Similarly, you want to have experts showing you how to make trails through this data. And so tours by leading astronomers in Worldwide Telescope show you regions of high star formation, galaxy collisions, black holes, and so on. And they show you how you make the inferences from the different types of data that's out there. So it's really an exciting tool. And for example, in planetarium, I was in the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, and they now use a digital display, a Worldwide Telescope, rather than the mechanical, expensive displays of the past. And it's much more flexible. You can not only look at the stars, you can look at the Earth. And so instead of turning your telescope on the sky, turning the telescope on the Earth. And this is showing seismic data plotted on the globe. And if Wegener had had this tool, he would have had no difficulty in convincing people about the theory of tectonic plates. You hear the mid-Atlantic floor spreading, and round here is the ring of fire, of which Seattle is right on it and is overdue for a Category 9 earthquake. So by actually providing new ways of doing this, we're allowing scientists to go and make tours of the data now with Earth data. And so, for example, there's a lot of debate about climate change. You can make scientists give tours around the data on climate change to come to one conclusion, but other scientists can do different conclusions. And you can put them up in the cloud. This is what this tool does. And you can share these tours and discuss them. So it's really about storytelling with data. Now, that's for science, but you can also do it with history. And one of the demos you'll see tomorrow is about chrono zoom, which allows you to display across huge timescales from the origin of the Big Bang, origin of the planets, the origins of life. You can put geohistory, biohistory, all sorts of cultural history on the same plot and look at connections. It's what's called the big history agenda. And it's a very exciting tool, so I invite you to have a look at that tomorrow. So visualization is not only in the sciences and engineering, but also in the humanities. And with big data, you need tools to go and explore that. And also, you need eventually to save it. So this is a tool that we've produced for a project with NSF. It's called the Data One project with the California Digital Library. And it enables you, when you save data in Excel spreadsheets, if you want other people to be able to use it, you need to save a lot of other stuff. And this is a curation package. It's an add-on or a web service that allows you to do that. And so this has just been released this month. And it's now an open source tool that you can take and download and use and modify and extend and so on. So it enables scientists to curate their data. So this is a slide that comes from 2005 when I joined Microsoft Research. It was given by Bill Gates at the Supercomputing Conference, and it was a wonderful vision of how scholarly communication is changing. That you actually now, with electronic papers, you can actually go to the data, you can interact with the data, you can add your own data, you can interact with the image, you can run the program that produced the image, you can rotate the image, you can collaborate in new ways. And also, besides citations, you can measure impact. We heard about impact in the previous debates. You can measure impact in new ways that you want to do here. So scholarly communication is definitely under a revolution of its own. And finally, when you've published your paper in these new ways, you'll need to preserve some of it. And this stems from the National Archives in the UK felt they were facing a digital black hole because they had all these electronic documents in old formats. How many of you remember a word processing system called WordPerfect? Some of you do. All right. Well, what you do with the WordPerfect file, you need to be able to read it in 10 years from now. And so this is a tool that transfers it to a modern XML format. So various formats, Office Open XML, Open Document format, and in China, UAF. They're all XML formats. You can have an open source tool that takes you from one to the other. So this is a European project which is with national libraries and archives across Europe, which offers a translation service to preserve these documents. And this is another element of the future, I believe. This is a European project again, looking at various applications in the cloud. And again, tomorrow you'll hear a workshop led by Dennis Gannon, who was leading this project in Europe, about how the cloud can be used in a variety of applications. So this project had a number of partners, all of whom did a different type of application. And you can see how it worked, and you can talk with Dennis tomorrow. So this is a slide from Jim Gray's last talk, and it's his vision of the future, and I think it's a vision that many of us share. The literature is increasingly becoming open access. There's movements around the world for making the papers, the research papers that your taxes and my taxes have paid for, visible without paying an extra levy to a publisher. And what you want to be able to do is go from the literature to understand the data on which that paper reached its conclusions. You may want to add your data to it and make new discoveries. And so by combining and using data and results derived from many data sets, you can make progress and not reinvent wheels in the way that scientists tend to do. I see around the world that many people repeat things that have been done by other groups. So Jim Gray believed, and I believe, that actually if we can get such a system working, we can have a great increase in the science productivity, the efficiency of the whole scientific process. It literally is information at your fingertips, both from the papers you can find easily and the data. And about finding papers, one of the projects that we're looking at with collaborating with Microsoft Research Asia is on academic search. And the goal is to be able to search not only in the computer science discipline where we started, but all disciplines, the sciences and the engineering, that you can find in multidisciplinary papers. Ultimately, you can go to the data, you can find the data, and you can actually make Jim Gray's pyramid a reality using things like academic search. You can, of course, look like things like citation impact and H-indexes and all those things, but it has an API which enables you, for example, Nankai University could decide it doesn't want to use the citation impact or the H-index, it wants to have another measure of impact. And there are various groups around the world looking at different impacts. So a group in the University of Washington called Eigenfactor does something like PageRank to actually figure out the true impact of a paper, the number of links pointing to it, and so on. So you can write your own, with this API, you can write your own measure of impact for your university, and if you wish, you can use it for tenure decisions. So, research accelerators, we're trying to work with different groups, so we're working with computer science groups, with things like languages like F#, projects with the software engineering group, turning your mobile phone into a tool for teaching programming, because many people will have smartphones but may not have PCs anymore. So can you teach programming on such devices? Touch Develop tends to do that. And so there's a whole range of tools which publishing, research management, learning and exploration, scientific exploration. And these are many of them available actually in an open source form. And so you can now look at an organization called the Outer Curve Foundation. And it's a repository for open source codes, and Microsoft Research Connections runs the Research Accelerators Gallery, and these are some of the open source projects that we have. We've just added another one, Data Up is now in here, Chrono Zoom is in here, for example. So again, one can actually use and collaborate with academics around the world, building communities around such tools or new tools that you think are more important. So to conclude, since I have 1 minute 23 seconds remaining, I think where we're moving is towards a cyber infrastructure which is more intelligent. There's a database in National Library of Medicine called PubMed, where in PubMed the abstracts of scientific papers in biomedical area are deposited. And they have 2 papers per minute, per hour, per 24 hours, per every day of the year, 2 papers a minute are deposited. And there's no way you can keep up with that. You need tools to help you. You need some semantic tools. And we hear this is in the form of finding the user intent when they're searching. We need help from computers to do the inference and the aggregation and the intelligent data mining to allow us to make discoveries, to understand, to find needles in haystacks. So I believe you'll have some of these services running in the cloud and some of them you'll have locally. Exactly what the mix will be will depend on your application. But I think that's where we're heading, and you see now semantics is increasingly one of the words used in all the projects that we're doing, understanding from data, understanding from the welter of information out there, can we make intelligent inferences from that data? So, thank you very much for coming. It's been great to see you all here, and I'm very grateful to be back in Tianjin. Thank you very much.